Thank you for joining Tarot in White Oracle, where we get into the cloud to see what we see. Now, this is a learning center and all of them are going to be free. I do have a bunch. This is about the Minor Arcana and we're going to go into a bit of history. So if you want to learn about the Major Arcana, jump into playlist 2 or 3, and then I finish up with court cards in playlist 4. I'm going to be adding to each playlist as, you know, the months and years go by, but this is a lot of beginning information, and by that I mean it goes super in depth. So our minor arcana, many of you might know, this is the TDM deck, the Tarot de Marseille. This is the French deck. So this is actually a replica from the 1700s, but this deck is a copy, of course, from Jean Nobel and Vassillier's deck with Philippe Vassilier, which were created in the early 1600s. Now, Philippe's deck is the earliest one that we have from 1639 to show that it actually looked like this. And this is pretty much what we use today, except, you know, obviously the cards have more designs or colors, whatnot, astrological placements, but the concepts are pretty much the same and the order of things. But what happened before that was Visconti and Forza. Now they have a deck from the 1400s, and I'm going to get my hands on one of those and I'll put another video for that. And that deck was created in the 1400s. Now many people say that it started with about 20 trump cards, and in a 10 or 20 years it ended up with 22 trump cards. And so basically they are exactly the trump cards that we use today. The 22 major arcana are the 22 cards from the Visconti Forza deck from the mid 1400s. By 1460 we had our trump cards. Now they didn't have them numbered, but they did have them in hierarchy. So depending on where you were, in what region, you know, you knew the empresses and the popes were first, you knew Last Judgment was last. The Fool card was usually thought of as last because it's a 0. And of course, when the TDM came along, we moved it into the 0 placement. We put it first, and in the Rider-Waite and Smith, we put it first. But they did understand that there was a hierarchy to the cards. We're just not really sure for sure what hierarchy they had because they didn't number them. However, I do think that all of the cards were linked to Hebrew letters. I'm convinced of it now that I've done all this study. Not only the Hebrew letters, but that the Hebrew letters were linked to Egyptian glyphs. And you can look in playlist 2 and 3 to dive further into how all the arcana are linked to the Hebrew letters and how the Hebrew letters are linked to the Egyptian. And I have another video I'll be adding to the collection, which is all about the Urim and Thummim, which is what the Israelites used 3,500 years ago. And it's super fascinating. It is tarot. That's exactly what they did. And so I'll be putting a video in playlist 2 or 3 about that. But this one is all about our minor arcana. So our minor arcana in the TDM deck, so this is 1700s, this is what they would play. So this was the wands, this was our cups, this was our swords, and this was our coins. Now, I think that when the decks were originally created, you know, this is our wands. I think when the decks were originally created in the 1400s under Visconti and Forza, that the Hebrew letters were put there deliberately represented in each of the arcana cards, and it was hidden in a playing game. I do know that the Rabbi Rambam lived in Spain. He moved then to Egypt, and he died, of course, in 1200, and 200 years later we had the deck show up in Italy. I know that there were many Jewish people who also, many of them who knew about Kabbalah or the Hebrew letters in general, who lived in Europe. But during that time, of course, in 1200 and earlier, a lot of them were leaving because of persecution. Now these are your swords, and then these are your coins and the coin cards. So now these are all the minor arcana. So we do have 4 different suits. and we do have 10 in each suit. Now they do represent also the Sephiroths in the Tree of Life in Kabbalah. So you can dive into playlist, well, I think actually this playlist 1, video 4 talks about that, and then you dive more into it with the Major Arcana in playlist 2 and 3. But if you want to compare this to the Rider-Waite-Smith, of course, this was in the late 1800s, and it basically was just a copy of the cards that already existed from the TDM deck, but they were given color and they were updated. Of course, Smith is left off a lot of the time because she was a woman. So some of the major arcana from the 1700s, the Lovers looks like this. Now, I've seen the Visconti and Forza deck from the 1400s, and they are exactly the same in concept and name as this deck. Except that this deck has numbers. It numbers them. So we do have our Lovers card here. This is in the 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s. The Rider-Waite-Smith comes along. They're talking about it, designing it, finally publishing it. So this is the same concept. And so this is the same with the Visconti Forza. They have a Lovers, and that was made in the 1400s, and it's same concept, same name. It's just they don't have a number on the card. You can look here at our Empress, number 2 card in the Rider-Waite-Smith, and of course it's, or sorry, number 3 card, and then our number 3 card for the TDM. So the TDM is a French deck. It's a deck that was created in France, and it was based on the decks that were being created in Italy. And the Visconti Forza is a deck from Italy. This is the moon, so this is what it looked like in the 1700s. This is what it looks like in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So as you can see, it's very similar concepts that are passed down. And if you go back in time all the way to the 1400s, when the deck first shows up as, you know, a 78 card deck with 22, my finger's showing, with 22 of the trump cards, you can see that it's also very similar. So I'm really excited to get that deck. I'm ordering one, and I'll do a video on that. So this is just some of the examples of, so here we have a wand. So the Rider-Waite-Smith, mostly what they did was they re-envisioned the Minor Arcana, because originally in the 1700s, the Minor Arcana just looked like this. Like, these were all the wands. They were just wands, and they were 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, and that's what meant the number that you had of wands. And so Rider-Waite-Smith just redid it, and he made, and Smith, of course, the female artist, she designed the wands like this. And then of course we have our cups, and they're just, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's very simple. But then the Rider-Waite-Smith re-envisioned it, and you know, they added more art to it. And of course we had our regular swords, 1 up to 10. Rider-Waite-Smith added and envisioned those. Now, these are all, though, related to the Zephyros on the Tree of Life. So you can go through and see each quality under the Tree of Life and see how it correlates to the Minor Arcana. Now, they may have done that deliberately, because it does seem like they fit pretty well, but it's hard to say for sure, but they do fit, so it's very interesting. We have the coins, of course, 1 to 10, and the revisioned ones in the 1900s with Rider-Waite-Smith. The late 1800s, late 1900s. Yeah, so this is, you know, how the decks were. And, you know, if you'd like to know more about how the Tree of Life relates to the Minor Arcana or the Major Arcana, or how the Hebrew letters became a part of the Major Arcana, or how the Egyptian glyphs are related. I encourage you to watch my other playlist because I dive really deep in that. But I just wanted to touch up on a light history to kind of get your toes wet. And then, yeah, hope your curiosity leads you farther, because it can go down a really long rabbit hole. All right, so thank you so much for joining, and I will see you at the next Learning Center playlist.